How was your journey till Amazon once you started working with TCS? Was it tough? How did you apply? How did you prepare?
Amazon is hiring over hackers, which is pretty shocking.
What did you do in college in terms of coding, right? In terms of DSA, competitive coding, like did you do any such of these things? Normally, what happens is if you are joining a service-based company, a mass hiring company, or put randomly to projects. Now, if you're put to projects like testing, then it becomes very hard to apply that experience. That experience doesn't count. Then it becomes nullified.
I would recommend people, for someone who is preparing for the next FANG company, go ahead and drop.
If you are interviewing a candidate and you're asking 2 DSA questions, what is that one thing that you would see in that candidate to like mark him as a hire? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Riddhi Datta, and today I've got a very special guest with me. He is one of my batchmates from my own college, and I think this is the first time I'm featuring my batchmate or anyone from my college on my channel. So this is a very special moment for me. His journey, like me, also wasn't all great to start off with. Due to lack of opportunities, he started with a service-based company, which is TCS. He worked there for over 2 years, right? And then he finally got the chance to work at FANG and these type of companies. We will deep dive a bit on his journey, on what are the things he did, how did he get that call from Amazon, how did he prepare, and how his experience has been working at TCS versus working at Amazon. We will get into all of these things. So first of all, thank you Saptarshi for doing this on a Saturday and coming to office on a Saturday, because Amazon is now 5 days a week. So I'm very sure like coming to office every day is not a pleasant feeling, but thank you for doing this anyway. So first of all, let us a quick introduction to my audience.
Yeah, hey, thanks for inviting me to your channel. As you already talked, so we have been in the same college. So I have been from the same background that you have been, from the same college. I initially joined TCS out of my college, moving over to working there for 2 years around, and then moved over to Amazon. We'll talk through more as we get to specific details on how I got there, what my journeys, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Sure. So let us start right from the start, okay? Right from our college days. Let us, like, I have talked about it a lot on people who have been following me on my channel, but like I want to know from you about what did you do in college in terms of coding, right? In terms of DSA, competitive coding, like did you do any such of these things? How was the coding culture back in our college?
I think it's a fair question to start with. I believe something that you are also aware of, the coding culture was a bit lacking, at least when we started. We were the first batch, CSC batch that we started off. And then the like what our primary focus was, I think, was primarily into web development projects, app development projects, research papers. But coding as a culture was something that came much later. Coding, I think Coding Club was established. Maybe you were the founding member, and it gradually take it over later on. But yeah,
I think I tried doing it, but I didn't get a lot of support.
But it started.
I tried a lot, by the way. Yeah,
I think later on there were coding competitions and all. But I think from a personal perspective, we were exposed to a lot of. I think all of us did have a research paper. We did a couple of papers together. We went and presented stuff and all. I think that's what there. But I think competitive coding is something that was not much into focus in our college. I think something that all the Tier-3 colleges faces. So speaking from the experience perspective, it was more of into academics based coding, where we learn like the coding subjects what we have, and personally if you're willing to spend that time into coding as and you can do that. So that's more of it. I think later on it's your personal intention and intent. If you want to spend that time is where you can spend more and understand around that. Yeah.
And I think also like you mentioned about academic based coding, right? I think that is not coding in my opinion. It's like teachers used to come and they used to copy the algorithms from Corman and all over internet, and most of the time they didn't have any idea that how things are working behind the scenes, right? So it was more of a mug up sort of a thing. We also had algorithms in our fifth semester, right? Yeah. But we all know how things went. So I feel when it comes to interview questions and problem solving, it is more about you have to understand those classical algorithms really well and then put it into implementation. So that culture was not there at our college. And also I think back during our days, there was no YouTube, there was no awareness. So like we didn't see people getting into FANG, so we couldn't believe that these things are possible.
Very true. I think two things that I specifically would want to call out. One is there were resources available. Geeks for Geeks was there, but it was very unorganized. Now the content has become much more organized, and lot of people, like channels where you are actually spending time to build that content for people. There are creators out there who are spending their time into that. That was lacking. And I think the next part is something that I really came as a surprise to me later on, once I think it was 2-3 years back. Amazon is hiring over Hacker Earth, which is pretty shocking because back then Amazon was not even hiring from off-campus off-campus hiring was very less for Amazon. So opportunities has increased. The scope to contribute to that organized content has increased. People can learn easily and contribute. There is a defined path essentially.
I think the opportunities have increased, and that's why the people understood that now there is a market for this as well. Where Tier-3 students also can get into these sort of companies, and as a result, the resources.
People are willing to spend that effort and time into that. And, I mean, students.
And with that came the resources.
Agreed.
Right.
More demand supplies.
I remember when we are 2019 pass outside, and when we passed out, I think when we were in 2017-18, almost preparing for our final year placements. Back during that time, when I started with a bit of competitive coding, I received a lot of pushback from my classmates, and they were like, no, they have good intentions for me, but they said that, why are you wasting time in doing competitive coding? This is not going to be there anywhere. This is not going to be useful in any way, right? So you have to go and practice aptitude and all those things, because our target was very much focused on service-based companies.
True.
And to be honest, at that moment, if someone would have told me that, okay, you would be working for an Amazon or a Google someday, it would be like, it is a distant dream.
Because you have not seen that happening with people nearby.
Right. So, and also around the time, it was very hard to get calls into these companies and the interviews and stuff, not much resources. Right. So anyway, what sort of coding that you did back in your college? Like you mentioned, you did development and stuff, but did you do any competitive coding, data structure algorithms, anything, or it's just something that you picked off late after you got into working for?
So that's again, I think that will something that needs to set that context there. So as a coding perspective, one was that I used to take part in challenges, but not much into actually learning that. So I used to spend time into challenges. In our college, if you remember, we used to have the UMCon and stuff.
I used to set the questions.
True.
I know.
And there were a lot of those challenges on and off. So I used to take part in that, and then obviously perform bad. Because we did not have that proper guidance out there. But something that helped me there is I used to get an understanding of what is actually required to get into that momentum and that path. So over time, I was not too much invested into that, but on and off, I used to spend some time into learning a few topics, coding on and off, but not invested because that scope of where we want to go was never
defined.
Yes. Right. So on and off time was there then. I think the culture wise, since it was not much prevalent, is where as a group we were not invested into that.
Right. I think the major problem was, since it was a Tier-3 college, right? So our placements were mostly centered around the service-based companies. And from a college perspective, right, they had like 1,000 students, 1,900 students in a batch. And they saw, okay, we have to show placement numbers. So we have to get these students placed, like be it anyone, be it anywhere, right? I mean, it can be Amazon, TCS, anywhere. So they thought that a plausible and a practical way of getting more and more students placed is in a service-based company, because these companies are the more probability to hire from us, right? Especially during that time. So that is why they always pushed us and motivated us towards preparing for those sort of companies. So that's why they would push us to do an aptitude right from the first year of college, but they won't really push us to competitive coding or DS. And I don't think they even had much idea about it, right? So when I started the coding culture and I wanted to people to get into a bit of CP or DSA and stuff, I received a lot of pushback. Let me be very honest. But I think it's also when TCS started conducting this code vita, and also they had a coding round separately even for Ninja, Ninja candidates. That's where the HOD and everyone kind of shook up, and they were like, okay, because I remember my HOD came and told me in 2018 that you have to take a workshop. I don't know how you have to take a workshop because coding has suddenly now become important. Till I think 2017, TCS and other companies.
Code Vita was fairly new.
Fairly new, and I think even just not for Code Vita, even for the general Ninja hiring, right? I think till 2017 or 2017, I guess, one batch before us, TCS didn't used to have any coding rounds in the 3 lakh package, right? Once the coding got introduced over there, then it was a big thing, right? So now, okay, you have to know basic coding, and that's where it started. And generally, like in the interviews and in the placement setup by coding, it's mostly the competitive coding sort of, but like that's very easy stuff, right? Cool. So now let's start with your placements. You got into TCS, right? I also had an offer from TCS, right? And I didn't join TCS. You joined TCS. We both were rejected by Digital, by the way. We went for the interview, but we both got Ninja. So after that, how was your journey till Amazon once you started working with TCS? Was it tough? How did you apply? How did you prepare? If you can probably walk us through that.
Sure. If you remember, it was back in 2020 when COVID hit us.
Right.
That was a fairly bad time.
1 year into 1 year
Yeah.
experience we were there.
Correct.
Back then, yeah.
We were not even. It was a
8-9
couple of
months,
months.
yeah,
Yes,
8-9
yes,
months,
yes.
yeah.
So we were about to get used to that knack of going to office, understanding. That is where we had to sit back at home. So that gave us some time to spend on a different aspect apart from the traveling time is what got cut off. I started utilizing that time into preparing.
Okay.
That is one aspect of how I actually was able to crack Amazon at a later point in time. That was one. I think speaking from what I had as an experience is the most difficult part is not the interview, it's getting shortlisted to that company.
Right.
Because they need to trust a candidate coming from a Tier-3 college, a service-based company. For an interview, they're spending a sufficient amount of time to get that candidate interviewed through a loop or whatever. So that is where I feel the toughest part was, and I think what I did was, and something that your viewers might find it helpful is cold emailing, cold DMs, asking for referrals. I think people are out there to help you out, and the situation has improved much more. There are hiring managers who are willing to take that
Initiative, right.
help you out, and there are recruiters out there who are willing to take that bet on you and see if you can perform well, because there are a lot of people coming from service-based companies who are cracking these FANG companies. So that trend has been set and people are willing to take that bet on you.
Right.
So I would recommend people, for someone who is preparing for the next FANG company, go ahead and drop as many DMs, emails, whatever, reach out to people, make connections, build meaningful connections on LinkedIn, because that is where it will help you in a long term to get that resume shortlist. So something that it did and something that helped me was getting a referral.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me get that interview call.
Okay.
And
how did you get the referral? Just cold DM'd on LinkedIn?
Agreed. Yes. So I used to, I think, just reach out to people, ask them. People are willing to help you out. All of them might not respond positively.
Mm-hmm.
There might not be hiring available at point in time, but someone will respond and you will get a referral.
Mm-hmm.
So have and build meaningful connections. I think one is cold DM, the other is we're able to build meaningful connections, social connections with people who are willing to help you out. That will again help.
Right. I think by that time you could have also texted me. I think I joined Amazon in October 2020, December 2020, and you joined Amazon in
2021. That was in May.
Okay. Then I think your interview might be in
yes,
January,
because
so
I had a 3-month notice period, and
Right. But I think that's also what we didn't get, because since none of we didn't have seniors.
We did not have that network.
So
we had to build that
because
network.
Now if a junior comes to us, right, and we know he's decent in coding, we will refer him. Like, you will love to refer him, right?
I mean, people are there to help each other. Right? It's not that we are willing to not help people.
That thing in college biasness is always there. I mean, a little bit, even that favor a bit.
But agreed. That's true. But still, people will try to be as much helpful as to.
That's there. Right. Cool. So you applied by referral, got the call, and I think for the interview experience, it must be pretty much the same, like 5 rounds. Anything extra that happened or you feel should be worth mentioning, or is it just normal process for you?
I think I can specifically, the rounds were somewhat similar.
I have mentioned it on my channel as well.
Yeah, phone screen and then whatever that the loop. But something that I would say is people generally fear from so when I got the interview call, the recruiters are willing to give you a week, 2 weeks, a few weeks worth of preparation time. And then you take it. Suppose you're not prepared at that point in time, don't miss that opportunity. I've been taking interviews recently, and I've seen people coming up without preparation.
I know. Oh my god.
And that is a pain for the interviewee as well as interviewer.
I know.
It's wasting both of their time. So I think instead of doing that, what I recommend to them as well, something that I would recommend to your viewers as well, might be helpful, is take a week to whatever. Ask the recruiter if the position is not an immediate, urgent needs to be backfilled or filled, is where they can give you time, prepare, because if they're investing that time into you, they would want that to be meaningful.
Right.
So take that time off, take your phone screen or whatever, and then if you want some more time, take that loop across share your timings. If you're not comfortable doing it right now, they are willing to give some time and do that. That is one I think might be helpful. And the other aspect is, I think on the topic specifically, we try to cover as many topics as we can. I think at times we can, because I've seen historically there are certain topics which are primarily focused on certain FANG companies, heaps, graphs, DP, greedy, mostly it bases around that. Try, then that red, black, these are all we read it, but it's not mostly up. So I think we can limit the topics to what we should focus on. But yeah, experience is something that is again very similar, but how you prepare is something is where these tips you might find helpful.
So you prepared like from normal random resources like Geeks for Geeks or anything specific you followed?
I did follow. So that's again how I maintained have had that preparation is I started with Geeks for Geeks, and I used to something that worked for me is maintaining notes. So even if you remember during my college, I used to stay back late in college, take notes, maintain notes. So that is something that preferably works for me. Maintaining notes and then revising, reading it off. So similar is what I did for coding. So if I found a problem which is very interesting, which is something that is not easily solvable at one go, is where I used to maintain notes. Maintain the trick of certain questions, which is again based on that if you're aware about that question, and then you're able to like you need to know that trick to solve that. That I used to maintain notes of that. And as I gradually got a grasp of concepts from YouTube, Geeks and all, then I started solving on LeetCode.
Right.
The latest, if you remember, there is a section in LeetCode, that interview experience section.
Right.
And then the frequently asked questions. So I used to go through them, read through those. I mean, solve that on LeetCode online coding platforms, and then gradually have a few mock interview sessions. Is where I started picking that pace up.
Okay, so just let us take a quick pause over here and maybe just for the sake of the audience who doesn't know what is it to interview at Amazon. Like I think there are 5 rounds for SDE 1.
Yeah.
The first round is a phone screen or an online coding assessment. I had an online coding assessment, you had a phone screen.
Yeah.
Second is then 2 DSA rounds. Third one is a bar raiser round, right? Who has the veto power to reject or select a candidate. And then you have a hiring manager round who mostly grills on your projects, right? And now, after these 5 rounds, there is a debrief that happens. Like all of the interviewers sit with the bar raiser and they take a decision whether they should hire a candidate or not.
I've actually seen bar raiser raising the veto to revert the panel's decision. Everyone has a reject or accept, and it's actually getting reverted. So it's actually a veto that the bar raiser has. If you're able to perform that round very well, he can even veto your other interviewers' decisions.
Right, and in Amazon, it's like a majority vote. Like as unlike Google, who has like a consensus vote. Like everyone has to be in consensus to hire the candidate, but in Amazon, it's majority.
It's more of, I would say, the onus. It's kind of majority, but again, a lot of the onus lies on the bar raiser.
Right.
So bar raiser and a hiring manager, the way they perceive the round, they take in feedback. All of that happens, but it's somewhat of the bar raiser and the hiring manager has a greater say in that. Entire debrief.
So you take interviews at Amazon, right?
Yeah.
How is that? Like I have also taken interviews at Amazon, but like currently, what do you expect out of the candidate? Like if you are interviewing a candidate and you're asking 2 DSI questions, what is that one thing that you would see in that candidate to like mark him as a hire?
Again, a fair question. I mean, the biggest indicator of whether he should be a hire or no hire is how he is thinking through the problem. Even if he's not able to solve the entire problem, code it up, but he's logically thinking, he's taking that hint, able to break that down and solve for it, is where I think would something that we as interviewers look for. And I think something that is easily understandable is if he knows the problem logically. I have seen cases where he is able to share the high level solution, but if I probe a bit more, he is not able to share exact low level details on what this exact solution is. So building that logically, thinking through the entire from the brute force to the entire optimized solution, even if you're not able to build the most optimized, at least have your thought there, think through it is mostly a thought solving problem.
Right, true. Cool. So now people have this myth, right, that if you're working for TCS or service-based companies, you don't get calls, and sometimes people feel that you're like blacklisted from a lot of companies. And we recently saw this post on LinkedIn where I think one of the recruiters at Meta shared that a list of companies which we are not going to hire or give any chances to. So people have these myths, right? Even I think I also had, because I didn't join TCS, I joined a different company. So you obviously, did you feel any such biasness when you were applying to other companies as well as Amazon?
Yeah, I think before I answer that, I'll rather take a step back and help answer something that will help your viewers is, while I have been taking interviews, there has been profiles now where Tier-3 colleges are actually being interviewed aggressively, and people having backgrounds in non-FANG companies are being interviewed for. So that has, in current scenario, that myth has completely gone.
At least for Amazon.
At least for Amazon. Speaking from experience again. Now coming over to the question, what was the scenario a couple of years back? back then it was an actual is where I felt a thing, because people did not, and I think that makes sense. There was this was not tested back then. So getting that interview call, as I mentioned, was the most difficult part. So over time that has mellowed down. So it's the situation.
I think there are so many offices in India right now for Amazon.
And they need people.
So they have to hire from Tier 3 colleges.
I think Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they are opening more and more offices.
Yeah, so I think back during our time, they were hardly, that headcount was not even there. So they only restricted to IITs and NITs and those colleges. So it was very more tough to get into at that time.
And I think the other part is candidates are willing to spend that effort, time and energy into preparing for the next level, and get that shortlisted, interview, work hard. So they are performing well, right? It's not that they are just being interviewed and they are not able to perform. They are able to perform well along with other IITians and IITians. So that means they have that merit. It was more of an opportunity thing. So I think that has been working well, and that is like, don't think about where your background is. Work hard, you will get through.
Right, and you said like you applied to Amazon multiple times. You are not getting calls. I think you also applied for other companies as well. Yeah,
so I think I was trying to reach getting referrals. So once I applied, I was able to get that through. So, but yes, getting that response to referrals is where there was a difficulty, but once I got that referral, it was through.
Right, and I think other thing was even in TCS, right? So you were working mostly with development projects, right? I think that might have helped because you were like, normally, you know, what happens is if you are joining a service-based company, a mass hiring company, or put randomly to projects. Now, if you're put to projects like testing, then it becomes very hard to, you know, apply with that experience. That experience doesn't count, then it becomes nullified. So another thing is about luck. I think if you are getting into development projects in a service-based company, it's fine. You will make it through because your experience is relevant. So now, another question is that you have been with TCS for 2 years. I've been with Amazon for around almost 3-4 years. I got promoted. What differences do you find between working at TCS and working at Amazon, like a service-based and a cult product-based company?
Thinking about this, actually, I have been asked this question multiple times by many of my juniors in college and people outside. The biggest difference is
ownership.
Yes, I think the scope of work that a FANG company gets you to operate on. Not only FANG, any product-based company and service-based company, scope is it's very different. And I think it's fair to say that they hire more people. They have more people to like back in TCS. There was a testing team. There is a development team. There is a database team, deployment team. So there are multiple people who are assigned specific roles for each of that particular domain that they're operating on. Luckily, I got into development because I was able to spend that time into Java and also had that understanding. But there are specific teams divided. Here at Amazon or any other similar FANG-based company or product-based company, you get to collect your requirements in some form, convert that to implementable code, build a design for it, maintain it, deploy it, test it, get feedbacks. All of the entire SDE cycle that we are taught is getting. We are seeing it live. Then comes your mentoring and all. That's a different part. On the dev aspect, the scope is the biggest portion that was different. And the other part is the independence that you get to operate on. So I think since there are a lot more people, it's a fair decision that most of the decisions are top down in service-based companies. That it's mostly decided and then that trickles down. But in the product-based companies, it's more of it can be bottom-up, top-down. At least from a tech decision. So you have a greater say or contribution to what your product to build. And if you're, I think another part is which I think if you're staying for a longer time in a particular domain or a team, you gradually are able to have more informed opinions and therefore a greater say in how you would view your product to be built. I think the biggest learning which I feel I had at Amazon is thinking. I feel it's all about thought. SD, what differentiates a SD1, SD2 and SD3, one is scope, the other is thought. How are thinking? So I've seen my SD3 engineers, the thinking is somewhat that makes a difference. How they think and how we as SD2s think is different. If once we are able to get that thought process into as we mature as a developer and the thought process is much more refined, and maturity is where I think is something that becomes, I think, helpful.
True. I mean, it's like a big jump when you suddenly shift from a service to a product company.
That was...
And the more faster you do it in your career, it's more better
you
for
get
you.
more time to adapt to that.
Right.
And
especially at a junior level, you have more room to make mistakes. Rather than
Agreed. And I think that design, you get to work on scalable products. You get to actually use and understand how you are designing stuff, how you are... I think handling safety tech is also something that you get to work. Understand how to handle that pressure and on call and all. It's I think it's a lot stressful, but that's the most for juniors. I feel it's one of the best like focused area where you can learn a lot about your systems that you are not currently working as part of your team.
Right.
So if you want me to summarize it, overall I would say the primary is thought process that differentiates a good and a best engineer. So how you're thinking through a problem, I think something that I felt, I heard from someone and which I felt is actually makes sense. So when there is doc review, something that also happens, I think you have seen that when a SD1 comments, when a SD2 comments, when a SD3 comments, the comment itself says who is commenting on that doc. That is mostly thought process.
Right.
So the more you're maturing your thought is how good you are a developer.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, cool. Thanks, Saptarshi, for doing this. It was lovely to have this conversation with you. It's been pending a long time, by the way. And for viewers, right, especially you are into Tier 3 colleges or who is working in service-based companies and not getting calls and stuff, right? Don't get demotivated. We all have been through your journey. We all have been in your shoes somewhere in our life, right? And we all have made it under more difficult circumstances, I would say, because currently, as you heard from him as well, that the hirings have increased, right, due to openings and more openings and like India expanding as the IT market, right, globally. So I would say there's not much excuse rather than, you should work hard, right? If you want to, so it's all the difference, like whether you want to start off with a 3 lakhs package or you want to start off with a 20 lakhs package, right? And even if you fail to start due to lack of opportunities as a fresher, just join that company, make sure that you get relevant to work, right? Because that is very important. Otherwise, your experience would be nullified. And once you are 1 or 2 year experienced, you can always apply, and you never know, one day your luck would have it. And if you're prepared enough, you will eventually make it through. It's just about getting that one opportunity. So don't lose hope and just work hard and try to get the preparation done, because right now, I think there are so much resources out there, plethora of resources out there over internet, so it shouldn't be really an excuse, and it shouldn't be a concern or worry as well, because I think
right intent and hard work is all that is required to get through. We have resources, we have opportunities, everyone is there to help you out, so work hard as I think and follow him.
So one day when that opportunity will come, you should be in a phase to crack it, right?
Yeah, true.
Cool. I think having said that, we'll end this podcast on a good and a positive and a hopeful note. I thought it was like inspirational and as well as insightful, and if it was, don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more such content, because these numbers really help me a lot to bring more such eminent people to my channel and in turn motivate. You can connect to Saptarshi on his LinkedIn profile if you want to, or take referrals or whatever. He's still an SDE at Amazon. I hope he has no plans of leaving soon. I never know. But yeah, thank you so much, Saptarshi, for doing this. And yeah, we'll see you in some other video. Sure. We'll see you in some other video. Till then, stay safe and goodbye.